Thunderstorms are supposed to be peaceful, but every time lightning strikes, it reveals things you were never meant to see. Tonight, I'm sharing 3 true horror stories where the storm didn't just bring rain, it brought someone watching. The man in my backyard. I've loved thunderstorms for as long as I can remember. Even as a kid, while everyone else hid under blankets, I would sit by the window and listen to the rain pound the ground and the thunder roll across the sky. Somehow, my 6-year-old son inherited that same love. Whenever a storm came through, we had a tradition. We'd sit together under the gazebo in our backyard and just watch. No phones. No talking. Just rain, lightning, and thunder. This happened on a hot August night in Florida. The storm announced itself with a thunderclap so loud it rattled the windows in our living room. The moment we heard it, my son jumped to his feet, eyes wide with excitement. "Dad! Let's go outside." We ran through the back door and across the yard, getting soaked before we even reached the gazebo. Rain was already pouring hard, warm and heavy, drenching the ground in seconds. The gazebo was my pride and joy. Wicker sofas, a mini bar, a small TV, and a fire pit in the center. I turned on the fire, flicked on the TV for background noise, and my son and I laid back, listening to the storm crash around us. The thunder grew louder. Closer. The time between lightning and thunder kept shrinking. Each flash lit up the entire backyard like a camera flash, revealing the trees lining the edges of the yard in sharp, white detail. Then my son sat straight up. He pointed toward the far edge of the yard, near the woods. "Dad, there's someone out there." I laughed at first, assuming it was just his imagination, until I heard the tremble in his voice. "What do you mean?" I asked, standing up. I saw someone standing there. I walked to the edge of the gazebo and stared into the darkness, waiting for lightning. The next few flashes weren't strong enough to reveal much, just vague outlines of trees and rain, then the sky exploded. A blinding flash of lightning lit up the yard, and my stomach dropped. There was a person standing near the woods. Completely still. Watching us. I told my son to run inside and turn on the backyard lights. He didn't hesitate. As soon as he disappeared into the house, I kept my eyes fixed on where the person stood. 10 seconds later, the lights snapped on. The yard was empty. No movement. No footprints. Nothing. I waited for more lightning, scanning every corner of the yard, but whoever had been there was gone. I went inside and locked every door. My wife had already been told by my son, and she was understandably shaken. She asked if we should call the police. I lied and said I saw the person leave the yard. I didn't want to scare them more than they already were. We stayed in the living room, watching movies while the storm raged outside. Eventually, my wife took our son to bed. A little while later, I turned off the outside lights and sat back down. Not even 5 minutes passed before my son appeared in the doorway of his bedroom. He was pale. Shaking. "Dad, there's someone at my window." My heart stopped. I pulled him away from the door and told my wife to stay with him. I stepped into the hallway and stared at his window, waiting for lightning. When it flashed, I didn't see anyone. But I believed him. Someone had already been in our yard once. I grabbed a baseball bat and turned all the lights back on. Despite my wife begging me not to, I stepped outside into the rain. I checked the front yard first. Nothing. Then the side of the house. Nothing. Then the backyard, under the gazebo, beneath the deck, around the trees. Nothing. The last place to check was the right side of the house. As soon as I stepped toward the corner, I saw him. A hooded figure, peeking around the side of the house. I only saw half his face, pale and wet, one eye visible beneath the hood. Watching me. I screamed and ran toward him, bat raised. The moment I reached the corner, he was gone. No footsteps. No movement. Nothing. I ran back inside and locked everything again. I told my wife I chased him away, but the look on her face told me. She knew how close we'd come to something worse. My son slept in our bed that night. None of us slept much. To this day, thunderstorms don't feel as peaceful as they used to. Because sometimes, when lightning flashes just right, I swear I can still see someone standing at the edge of the woods, waiting for us to come outside again. Have you forgotten? Thunderstorms are rare where I live, which makes them exciting when they finally arrive. People step outside to watch, kids run through the rain, and the whole town feels different, alive. That night, I was gaming with a few friends when the first thunderclap hit. It was so loud that all our microphones picked it up at once. For a split second, I thought it was a gunshot. Then lightning lit up my room. I jumped up and looked out my window. Across the street stood a man. He was wearing a gray hoodie and jeans. He looked tall, thin, and completely still. I couldn't see his face clearly, it was hidden by the hood and the darkness. For a moment, I thought he was looking straight at me. Then he turned and walked down the street. I told myself it was nothing. People do strange things when it rains, especially here. Thunderstorms are a novelty. Still, I locked my window before sitting back down. About 15 minutes later, the rain had fully started. The wind howled through the streets, and lightning flashed constantly. I told my friends I was stepping away for a bit to watch the storm. I went out onto the porch and stood under the cover, letting the cool air wash over me. That's when I saw him again. The man was standing at the corner of the street, perfectly still, facing in my direction. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to stay calm. I told myself he was just another person enjoying the storm. After a few minutes, I went back inside. When I glanced down the street one last time, he was gone. Inside, my younger siblings were dancing in the living room to a cartoon-themed song, completely unaware of anything outside. The house felt warm and safe. Later that night, my phone buzzed unknown number. 2 messages. Have you forgotten? I know you didn't. A chill ran through me. My first thought was the man outside, but that didn't make sense. How could he have my number? I messaged my friends, accusing them of messing with me. They all swore it wasn't. Then, I tried to forget about it and watch TV instead. Sometime later, the doorbell rang. I checked my phone. 12:19 a.m. No one should have been visiting at that hour. I crept toward the front window and peeked through the blinds. The rain was coming down so hard it blurred everything into a gray haze. Then thunder exploded so loudly it made me jump back. At the same time, I saw movement near the door. Someone was running away from my porch. I didn't sleep much that night. A few hours later, another thunderclap jolted me awake. Then I heard a sharp bang against my window, not thunder. Something had hit the glass. I froze, barely breathing, then slowly lifted the blinds. He was standing right there. Hands pressed flat against the window. His eyes were hidden in shadow, but I could see his mouth. He was smiling. Not a normal smile. It stretched far too wide, pulling at his cheeks like his face wasn't meant to do that. Then, without breaking eye contact, he stepped back, turned, and walked into the rain. I didn't move until morning. When I finally worked up the courage to check the window, I saw a small piece of paper taped to the glass. 3 words written in shaky handwriting. Have you forgotten? I've never seen the man again. But sometimes, when storms roll in and my phone buzzes late at night, I'm terrified it'll be him, asking that same question. The man in white. It was just after midnight when I finally clocked out of work. The weather had been bad all evening, but by the time I stepped outside, it had turned violent. Rain came down in thick sheets, and thunder cracked so loudly it felt like it was splitting the sky open. I drove a small car back then, an old sedan that wasn't built for weather like this. The windshield wipers were on their highest setting, but I could still barely see the road. Even though the speed limit was 55, I crawled along at 40, gripping the steering wheel. The highway was empty. No streetlights. No buildings. Just woods on both sides of the road and rain swallowing everything. That's when I saw him. A figure dressed entirely in white sprinted out of the woods and straight into the road. I barely had time to react. I slammed on the brakes and swerved, hydroplaning off the pavement and crashing head-on into a tree. The airbag exploded into my face, knocking the breath out of me. For a few seconds, everything went silent. When I realized I was still alive, panic hit me all at once. My car was destroyed, smoke drifting from the hood, rain pouring through the cracked windshield. I looked around, searching for the person I almost hit. There was no one. No footsteps. No movement. Just rain and darkness. My phone shook in my hand as I tried calling my brother. No answer. My sister didn't pick up either. Finally, I called my dad. He answered groggily, and I explained everything through shaky breaths. He told me to stay in the car, keep the doors locked, and that he was on his way. I called roadside assistance next. They said help was coming. So I waited. The minutes dragged on. I kept scanning the windows, convinced someone was watching me. Then I felt it. That unmistakable feeling of being stared at. I turned my head. There he was. Standing inches from my passenger side window. The man in white was soaking wet, rain dripping from his clothes. His mouth hung open in a strange, perfect O shape, and his eyes were squinted, almost like he was struggling to focus. He pressed his hands against the glass and slowly dragged them across it. I screamed at him to go away. He ignored me. Instead, he tried the door handle. Locked. His expression didn't change. He began pounding on the window with his fists, then with his elbow, over and over, the dull thuds echoing inside the car. I called my dad again, crying, barely able to speak. My dad shouted for me not to open the doors. He said he was almost there. Headlights appeared behind me. The man froze. When my dad's car pulled up and my father stepped out, yelling, the man turned and bolted toward the woods. My dad tackled him before he made it 10 steps. They struggled in the mud as rain poured down. My dad held him there until the police arrived. The tow truck came first. Then the cops. The man was arrested, blood mixing with rain on his face as they dragged him away. His name was Marcus Green. I never went to court. I never wanted to see him again. But even now, when I drive at night in heavy rain, I slow down more than I should. Because sometimes I swear I see a white shape moving at the edge of the road, waiting for someone else to stop. If you hear thunder outside tonight, don't rush to the window. Sometimes the storm isn't what's watching you, it's who the storm lets hide.